the last two posts of Aaron Swartz of his life were both about, and for many years I would look back at his Twitter account and think, this is, I would regret that these were the last two. Yet there's something also profound about the fact that we're back now, 10 years later. His last two posts were about the idea of minting the coin.
Mint the coin.
And we are back. And because the Freedom Caucus, in exchange for its support of Kevin McCarthy, or those Freedom Caucus holdouts, were able to extract a concession from him. Although we can talk about whether or not it was actually a concession or whether this is the kind of thing that Republicans were going to do anyway. But it's to use the debt ceiling as leverage, as a hostage against the Biden administration, against the Senate, to say, in order for us to not default on our debt, we are going to demand these following concessions around spending. And basically they want to take all spending back to at most 2022 levels, including defense spending, which is going to cause some heartburn within the Republican hawk community. The response when Republicans did this 10 years ago from the left was to say, use this constitutional but obscure and kind of weird sounding move, which is called minting the coin. The Constitution allows the U.S. Mint to produce coinage of any value. Doesn't say what the value is. So the U.S. Mint could take a platinum coin, put Trump's face on it, which they really should, and deem it to be worth $1 trillion, $30 trillion, $60 trillion. It doesn't matter. Like that's pointless for the exercise. And then that gets deposited. The New York Federal Reserve then credits the Treasury with an extra $30 trillion. That doesn't enter that $30 trillion into circulation and spark runaway inflation. But what it does is it gives the Treasury the ability to then pay the debts that have been appropriated by Congress, that have been authorized by Congress. So when somebody's got a T-bond and they turn it in, then they can cash the T-bond in. That's all it means. It allows the system to continue to function. And so I don't know if we have his posts here, but so here's the U.S. Mint. One of the U.S. Mint guys like, yes, let's do it. And then his other one was linking to a White House petition, which we can put the second one up, which I ended up collecting hundreds of thousands of signatures. If you click that now, it just goes to a dead link because Trump got rid of all of Obama's White House petitions.
Right.
But I'm sure you're going to see this again. People saying, don't even negotiate with the Freedom Caucus. Just mint the coin and be done with it. So what do you think?
So I think the mint the coin folks have a point, and that's not good. I think it's actually like the real conversation here is about what's happened to our monetary system post gold standard, what's happened to the world's monetary system in the last 100 years plus. It's happened very quickly, but I think they completely have a point. I mean, it's actually very hard without getting into the wonky sort of weeds of monetary policy on a very basic level to say that they don't have a point, because they do, and they really do have a point. And so it's sort of like people are at an impasse. I'm curious what the Venn diagram is between MMT and mint the coin on the left. It's probably pretty. Yeah, it's just a circle.
Right, because if you're a modern monetary theory person, then you think what matters is, the money supply, inflation, tax rates, resources, basically.
Yeah.
If there is too much money chasing too few resources, then you need either to invest in a way that produces more for the economy. It's more real stuff, or you need to tax money out of the economy. Nowhere in that is or the deficit, like the debt ceiling,
the supply,
a factor.
Right.
Like that's not. Yeah, right. That's not an issue. And if it winds up in the Supreme Court, that also gets interesting, because then you're asking John Roberts and his crew to produce a global financial crisis, like to issue a ruling that knocks 10,000 points off the stock market and makes ATMs not work, if we're going to take the worst case scenarios on that. And that is, to me, you tell me, you know the conservative court better. To me, that's not what Amy Coney Barrett signed up for. That's not what John Roberts signed up for. It's not what Neil Gorsuch. None of them signed up for that. Like they have an agenda that they want to accomplish as a majority on the Supreme Court. And I think that destroying the global economy could actually get in the way of that agenda.
You know, this is the thing, though, that like it has to, because the way the Freedom Caucus sees this and the way Republicans see this is that their one point of leverage, when you have the sprawling administrative state that overwhelmingly leans Democratic. You can debate whether that means it leans left or not, but it overwhelmingly leans Democratic, mostly based here in Washington, D.C., in the wealthy, Democratic-leaning suburbs. And so their one point of leverage, they feel like in a government like that, is the purse strings. And if you control the House, even barely, you control the purse strings. And that means the only thing you can do for a Republican base that feels like the government, not even just Republicans, independents, those sort of blue-collar Trump voters who voted for Obama on the basis of hope and change and then voted for Trump on the basis of making America great again, which is also kind of the same hope and change type populist messaging. Those folks want to see people in Washington get like a dose of populism. That's what they want to see. And so whatever form that takes, whether it's real or not, I think Crystal makes some good points about how it's being feigned and exploited and used. This is how Republicans say, this is the only thing we can do right now. Our hands are tied. There's nothing we can do at the EPA. There's nothing we can do at OSHA. There's nothing we can do on X, Y, and Z. This is one thing that we can do. And so they're saying, this is our lever. This is the button that can be pushed. And it's not going to go well for them if it's cutting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all that.
On that point, it feels like they're already bungling the politics of it. Like that Trump showed them that the move on this issue is to say that you're not going to cut Social Security, in particular Medicare. I think there's still room, even in a Trump coalition, to go after Medicaid. But you don't want to say that you're the party that's going after Social Security and Medicare.
No.
I thought Trump was pretty clear about that.
No, they're absolutely bungling the politics of it. And Paul Ryan worked on this for forever. He had all of these like really wonky plans to deal with entitlements, because it's absolutely true that if you're worried about the debt and the deficit, you have to be worried about entitlements. It's the biggest chunk of government spending, basically. People think our defense budget is extremely high. It is. But our spending on entitlements is like way higher than that. And so yeah, there's an argument that it's a very real substantive issue, that some of the inflation that we're suffering from now is because we run such a high debt. That's an argument people make. And so if you believe that you have to deal with it, then hey, but oh my gosh, running straight into cutting Social Security. Like this is what Blake Masters had a real problem with, because Rick Scott put it in his plan, and then a bunch of Republican candidates had to answer for it in states with high populations of people who rely on Social Security, Arizona, for instance, being one of those. And so, yeah, if you're going to run headfirst into this, you need to be, speaking of A/B testing, like you really should have tested something here.
Seems like it was tested. Yeah, and so there was a House Republican on Fox the other day. Was it Jeff Duncan? I forget who it was, saying like, military, yeah, sure, but we got to focus on entitlements. When that sort of thing happens, do people on the right in your world like freak out? Like, hey, get back on message here. Like, why are you kind of validating the worst fears of the public, that Republicans actually, as soon as they get into power, they're going to cut Social Security and Medicare?
Well, that's what's so interesting, because during the Tea Party era, it was the opposite. You had this chunk of the Republican base that was like, hell yeah, entitlement cuts, the country is, on the wrong track, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's the freeloading component and all of that, and it was popular messaging. Now, even the populist right is like, whoa, can't be doing that, because I think there's a new awareness on the level of suffering that a lot of the folks who maybe want to go right into entitlements, Social Security, Medicaid, whatever, they probably don't have such a clear vantage point. They probably don't have as much contact with the level of suffering that exists among the American population. Two things can be true. Dealing with entitlements might be important, but dealing with entitlements right now is not acceptable. I mean, there's just no acceptable, humane way on the table or policy on the table from Republicans right now to deal with that.
Yeah, I think Trump at one of his rallies could look out at his audience and say, these are not the people that are going to necessarily benefit if I cut Social Security and Medicare, looking at that crowd.
Yeah.
When Paul Ryan is in a room, he's looking at it around a table or around a dinner table, every single one of those people would benefit from that. So yeah, I think you have different audiences that people understand.
Well, and you can't make the Paul Ryan argument that folks from all different socioeconomic backgrounds are going to benefit from entitlement cuts, because that's an argument that he would make. You can't. That is so tonally off base. Like, it's just impossible to make.
You will love getting a lower Social Security check.
Just wait. And again, that's the fault of the Republican Party for not coming up with policies that actually really are able to deal with things like inflation, to deal with things like deficit, whatever, and also be humane. There's just nothing on the table. And that's why I think it's completely reckless and irresponsible to run headfirst into these conversations without having a way to deal with it that is not going to put vulnerable people at risk, because that's exactly what it would do. And that's why things like Mint the Coin, which are populist and fun in nature, are going to, as time moves on, get more and more traction.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.